Hello, this is János, welcome to Real World Audio, and today questions, comments and answers. And a week ago Mr. Baji 888, he shared something really awesome with us about silver cables versus copper cables. So you have guessed right, today the topic will be copper and silver. Where are the difficulties and what is the easy bit about them? So this is what he shared with us. Most manufacturers are forced to deny the magic of silver conductors because to accumulate bigger inventory of silver is really hard nowadays. Copper is much easier for them to collect and sell it with much higher profit margins just by saying bullshit features of special copper treatments. Special. But mandatory cabling is the easier part of the problem. Much bigger problem is the copper conductors inside the gear and the speakers. It's much harder to swap them in a proper manner, which also makes a good synergy with the equipment. Most gear is tuned with copper, here lies the problem. So, thank you Mr. Baji, you have outlined the biggest problems with both copper and silver cablings, about pricing as well as availability and what we can do about it as users, because it's kind of, we can navigate the world of interconnect, speaker cables, power cords by finding out which is the most sensible one that is affordable, good value and results in a good improvement for our system. And when you get together, a couple of your friends, look online, share experiences, you find people whom you trust, you listen to them, try out what they recommend, you can get there and make significant improvements in your system towards the direction that you want to go. At a sensible price. However, the difficulty is, just as Mr. Baji shared with us, the cabling inside your gear, inside your speakers, inside your amp, inside your DAC, inside your streamer. Those are really hard to get to in comparison to an interconnect change, for example. You have to open up the boxes, and number one is that if you are used to only buying equipment and not DIYing it, you don't have that kind of experience, you will be, you won't go that way, because number one, it will void the warranty, and number two, you will be scared that you do something to your components that will just destroy it, and then you have voided the warranty anyway, so you have just bricked a component that's probably thousands of dollars worth, or maybe hundreds of dollars, but for you those hundreds of dollars count as $1,000 or thousands or tens of thousands or even millions would count to others. Because let's face it, if someone has like a fleet of Bentleys or Rolls-Royces, for them, if they tinker around with their $1 million amplifier, who cares if they bust it? It's not even a raindrop in a bucket. If they try tweaking an ongaku, okay, this is my number 20 ongaku that I messed up and it goes to the scrap pile, who cares? But if you have been saving for maybe like a shit piece of equipment, a shit dock or something like that, even though it might be just $150, for you, if you brick it, it will be irreplaceable, or you need to wait like a year to put together enough savings to replace it. So I think that's the number one issue that we face when we want to upgrade our cabling, is that of course after a while you will get there that you can optimize your interconnect, your power cord, your speaker cable, but then to keep on that path and to continue those changes that you initiated with the cables, you really need to dig into the equipment. And once you start digging inside the gear, you will realize that changing the wire inside the gear makes a bigger difference than the wire that hooks up the components. Because people have, why is that? It's because of laws of physics. What made a big difference for me in objectively evaluating conductors and parts of the hi-fi chain is that I stopped thinking about conductors as just in terms of resistance, inductance, capacitance, and length. Because it's not that the longer the wire, the more it counts, not at all. Every bit of wire counts. And even when you have a tiny short piece of wire, maybe just an inch of wire, hooking up your circuit board to the RCA jack, that piece of wire can be potentially an Achilles heel and can limit your system's capabilities, so that whatever interconnect you hook up after that component, you won't be able to hear their potential, because there's that 2-inch wire, that few centimeters of wire, that is limiting what is coming out from your component. And that limitation is not just like resistance, inductance, and capacitance, but because it's not just these components that are the properties that affect the signal that's passing through the wire. Think about the wire, at least this is what I think about it, and I'm sharing it with you. It might be useful to you. You might just totally discard the idea. It doesn't, it's fine with me, whatever you do with it. I just give this idea to you so you can play with it and put it to use. So how I imagine every single conductor in the audio chain, I imagine them like a garden hose, like plumbing. That and I imagine how the electricity passes just like passing water through a hose. And it's not just the diameter of the hose that matters. That would be equivalent to the resistance of a conductor, but also how the surface is, which would be kind of like equivalent to a capacitance, because if you have like a uneven surface hose, then it will create small currents, small eddy currents inside that garden hose, where the water receives some turbulence, where turbulence is created, and that's affecting the flow of the water the same manner as capacitance would build up in a conductor. And once we while we are still looking at DC current, all those effects might not amount to such big difference. But in audio, we are talking about AC currents. So the music is all about AC currents. The only time we have DC in audio, in amplifiers, is in the power supply. So the power supplies build up DC, and that DC is modulated and becomes your audio signal. And basically the majority of the cables, all the signal cables, are carrying AC signals. So basically electricity goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And with that back and forth movement, it is subject to very, very different effects than DC just going one direction and not changing directions at all. And just as when you have a garden hose, you want to have just as optimal a hose as possible, without any kinks, any bends in it, any kind of narrowing inside the hose, and you can find the analogies in the wires for that. And essentially, when you put any kind of piping or any kind of hose in the path of water under pressure, it's going to change the flow properties of that water. So the water that will sprinkle out from the end of your hose, depending on what kind of different transitions it went through, it will look like very different. You will have a nice even flow that will squirt very far away, or you will have like a spray going all over. You can have like puffing coming out, like the water coming out in puffs and droplets everywhere. And that's the same thing happening, similar effects happening to electricity as well. So all those capacitive, inductive, resistive elements, they just create a very, very complex interplay. And also, why such a short, you might think, okay, two inches of wire, what kind of difference does it make? I think it makes a lot of difference, and I'm saying it because I tried it out. If you change like any part of the signal path to a different wire, it will have an audible difference, and sometimes that difference can be really, really huge if the rest of your system allows hearing it. Because I've said this like a million times already in my previous videos, whether you hear the effect of a cable change or a component change in your system, it depends on whether your system has detail level or resolution or resolving capacity or low level detail transmitting capacity or not. Because when it doesn't, then you can put on the cheapest DAC, you can put on the most resolving DAC, they will sound almost the same. You can put in like a 50-cent RCA cable, you know, that black PVC coated stuff that comes with, you know, like that came with commercial grade stuff like from the 80s or even earlier on, that really junk connectors, and it will sound the same as, like almost the same as putting on like a Kimber Select silver cables. You won't hear any difference, and that's not because there's no difference between the cable, but because the equipment you are using is just incapable of resolving anything. In the past I went into great details about it, but now I'm looking into a different aspect of this subject, and that aspect is, why is that gear limiting this? Why you cannot hear the changes in your system? And that's because several reasons, but one of the reasons is these poor quality conductors having a tuning effect to the signal. So when you have a low quality conductor, which in a commercial amplifier or any amplifier, if you have like circuit boards, those poor quality copper traces on the board, they do act as a harmonizer. Actually, every conductor acts as a harmonizer. It just aligns the flow of the electrons that push through the conductor, because when the electricity flows through a conductor, it generates an electromagnetic field around it, and that electromagnetic field will help to contain the flow of electricity in that conductor. And depending on the layout, quality, etc., it all adds up that each piece of conductor will have a significant impact in the low level and qualities of the transmitting capabilities of that wire, and not just the low level but the harmonic detail as well, which is like harmonic clarity. It's also coming together from these low level components in the sound, because that's how the human ear detects harmonic clarity, is that those really tiny, really minor details, really minor fluctuations in the sound. It's borderline subliminal details. And when all of that is being erased by a poor quality conductor, you won't hear anything, any change, even if you change big things in your system. Because of these poor quality conductors, interspersed everywhere in your system inside the components, it will hamstring the effects of your interconnects. So maybe most of you already hit the bottleneck of the interconnect cables, of power cords or speaker wire long time ago, because the problem is inside the amplifier, inside your preamp, inside your loudspeaker crossover components, and there the good news is that you don't have to change like those like 6 feet, 10 feet, like 2-3 meters of wire, put like high quality expensive wire 2-3 meters long. No, you just need a few centimeters bits of pieces, and that will bring you as big difference as if you are going up another notch with your interconnects or speaker cables. So I think that that's my addition and my thoughts, my additions to Mr. Baji's post, which was really awesome. And there was a second bit of his post that he commented, is that most of the gear are voiced for copper. And that's why when we start adding silver into the system, first of all, you hear right away that there's tremendous potential in silver, but in most cases it will just sink your boat, because the overall effect, how your system will sound, it will be really unbalanced. And that's not because silver is unbalanced, but because the system is just over-optimized for copper conductors. And when you just change a few things, then you really have to change the voicing of your system, probably also need to change the value of the crossovers in your capacitor, or if you are using DSP, you have to change the amount of DSP you are using, the EQ curve of the end result. You maybe need to change the capacitor brands that you are using, change the resistors to make the system gel. And that's primarily because silver lets you hear extremely low level details that normally with most copper conductors we don't hear. Of course, there are some very high grade copper conductors that allow much more low level retrieval than most generic coppers, but silver goes even beyond that. So that's my 2 cents. I hope it was really helpful for everyone. And please share your comments if you have more comments about it, experiences, if you tried out silver, what were your experiences, and maybe if I can help give pointers, I will give pointers. But most likely your comments will be pointers for everyone watching these videos. So thank you team for watching, thank you for being here, and have an awesome day. Bye bye.